Hello, everybody. This is Fernando for the latest Silent Hill podcast. All right, let's go ahead and we'll talk about the next enemy encountered within the Silent Hill 2 game. This comes after probably a little bit of a stretch of time after encountering the mannequin monsters within the game itself. It's something I've been a little critical of thus far when it comes to the Silent Hill 2 game is that there seems to be a lot less monsters encountered within the game. It seems like this is now a choice, like an actual choice by the developers of the game to make it, I guess, less action oriented and more drama and suspense oriented. But it's still it remains to be seen how well this will work after I finish watching the whole game. In any case, this is the next monster encountered, and it's found wandering the areas in the apartments and in the hospitals, and then in some cases some of the streets themselves. And it is a big one. It's actually the Bubblehead Nurse, which you'll see a picture of here, which becomes a main staple within the Silent Hill franchise. Basically, all of the iterations afterward of all the nurses within all of the games, their main focus or how they looked, how they acted, came from this game. Absolutely, there were nurses within the first Silent Hill game, but they were completely different than what this sequel had. And this sequel, the way that portrayed its nurses, became so popular that it pretty much stayed the same throughout all the rest of the games, and of course the movies, and then also the comics and some of the other mediums as well. So if you wanted to point to the catalyst and basically showcase where the nurse that we know of today in Silent Hill world came from, this is it right here. So again, they're encountered within various parts of the game. They seem to be encountered predominantly within the hospital, and I remember there was a distinct scene where you hear something, and it sounds like almost like a wail or a cry of some sort. And the way that the character James found these nurses, it was just basically it was like any other monsters within the game. It slowly lumbered and approached towards James, and then that's when he had to take some action. And then in that case, that's when he had his first encounter. Let's talk about the appearance of the nurse itself. Clearly, it has a distinct impression because of how popular it was. I mean, it's pretty much every guy's fantasy when it comes to nurses having, let's say, sexy Halloween outfits, like that kind of stuff. Because predominantly the main feature of the Bubblehead Nurse seems to be its clothing. I mean, or lack of when it comes to how it dresses. It has the very short miniskirt. It's got the cleavage with the large drop when it comes to its top portion, showcasing a lot of boobs, in other words. And then it has still somewhat of a, I guess you could call it like a model walk when it comes to how it walks and how it accentuates parts of its hips and so forth. But that's about it when it comes to anything involving sexy related stuff, because the rest of it clearly looks disgusting. It's got that rotting skin all surrounding it. Its clothing is also in some sense rotting as well. And then the reason why it's called the Bubblehead Nurse is because its head is completely wrapped with what seems to be some kind of gauze, like the stuff that hospitals use when it comes to treating very bad wounds or very bad cuts or burns or anything like that. Its head is completely covered with this, and it's not only that, but it seems to have like some kind of open mouth of some sort. It's kind of hard to discern, but the mouth area either seems to be extra bloody or it's actually open itself, like you can see part of its mouth, and whatever is exposed seems to be some really like mutant type stuff, like a mutant set of jaws with some teeth. I don't know. I think it's still up to interpretation as to what that is, but it supposedly gives a preview of what the rest of its face would look like if the actual gauze were taken off altogether. What's interesting to note is that there are two forms of Bubblehead Nurses within the games. It's a little subtle, but there are two of them within the game itself. There's the regular nurse that appears within the fog world, again, mostly encountered within the hospital world. And then when things shift over to the other world, i.e. the dark world, with that bloody, rotten environments that are done even more so, they have a shift as well. Their clothes become even more rotten, if you can note the difference. For example, here's a close-up of one of the nurses within the other world. It looks far more worse than its counterpart. And then on top of that, paying homage to the first Silent Hill game, it has a parasite attached to the back of its, I guess, back. And so just like the Silent Hill nurses in part 1 that had that parasite that seemed to control them, such is the case here. I don't know why the Fog World nurses don't have this particular, I guess, parasite, but who knows why the other world's nurses do altogether. As far as their attacks, they're pretty slow. They seem to lumber. They seem to move with about the same speed as Pyramid Head does. What's fascinating is that they seem to be really easy to beat. Like the guy, when he first encountered that first Bubblehead nurse, it just literally took like 2 or 3 hits. I think he was using, if I remember correctly, he had like a melee weapon of some sort, and he was able to bring it down within 2 or 3 hits. That Bubblehead nurse didn't even have a chance. And then in other parts of the game, he just runs right around them. He doesn't even confront them altogether. That's another, I guess, frustrating part of the Silent Hill 2 game, and I'll talk about that within my final thoughts, but I'll highlight something here. The first Silent Hill game, there were parts where you had no choice, but you had to fight these monsters. They were purposely made that way, the scenes and the places within the game, where in order to get from point A to point B, you had to go past all these monsters. Here, in Silent Hill 2, they seem to have a much more prevalence where it's easy enough just run around them. Like they're not going to be blocking anything pertinent. If anything, you can just lead them one way and then just run around them, and then that's it altogether. Is it more realistic? Probably, but it's far less encounters when it comes to having to shoot, having to hit, or being attacked by these Bubblehead nurses. Because thus far, the dude that I'm watching most of the time, he just avoids them altogether. He doesn't even really do anything much. He just goes through those seemingly endless apartment rooms or endless rooms within the hospital, and that's it. Just avoids them altogether. If you have to do something, it's recommended, if you're close range, to use a handgun. If you have a shotgun, that works too. But again, this stuff seems to be very easy. As far as what they're supposed to symbolize, they continue the theme associated with the main character when it comes to his sexual frustration. When it comes to James Sutherland and what occurred to his wife, because he wasn't able to be intimate with her during those last couple of years in her life, he has that built up what's called like sexual frustration. The term is called blue balls, if you ever heard of that, as far as the actual term itself. And so that world of Silent Hill picks up on his innermost desires, and in this case it's his sexual frustration, and that's why the monster in this case, the Bubblehead nurse, appears as is, i.e. like very provocative, again with the big boobs showcasing within the chest, the very short skirt, the push-up bra, seemingly even doing more when it comes to emphasizing the boobs. Just everything as far as what it does. Even when it lands on the ground, when it dies, its legs are widely spread apart, again further emphasizing what the underlying theme of James's frustration is within the game itself. So just like the mannequins that were the previous monster, it definitely continues that theme here. As far as other appearances, the Bubblehead nurses did appear in Silent Hill Book of Memories. They have just one name. They're just called nurses. You're looking at a picture of it here. It seems like they toned it down when it came to this particular game, because in Silent Hill 2, if the theme was being rotten, here it was the theme is being more, I guess, simplistic. It's still the nurse, but it definitely looks much more cleaned up, especially the face. Like the face, it looks like it's just one gauze, one wrap of whatever that thing is around its face, because it still looks like a face altogether. And then the clothing itself, much cleaner, same for the skin of the body of the nurses as well. But they attack and move the same way. I think they're supposed to be a little bit faster within the Silent Hill Book of Memories, but that's the next appearance of this character. Obviously they would appear in some of the other games, but the closest iteration of the Bubblehead Nurse is the Book of Memories. And then with regards to other mediums, like the films itself, there's the nurses within the Silent Hill 1 movie and then the Silent Hill Revelation movie. They're simply called the Dark Nurses, but they're the ones that pay the closest homage to the nurses in Silent Hill 2. And clearly, I mean, you're looking at a picture here. They pretty much follow exactly what the Bubblehead Nurse looks like, even down to the rotting skin and everything, emphasizing the sexiness of them. And they appear in that memorable scene where Rose confronts them as a group, and they start to get distracted by that light, that flashlight that she has altogether. And then finally, let's focus on some of the concept art within the game. You'll see it here, one of the earliest known concept arts of the Bubblehead Nurse, and you'll notice that it looks like it was going to follow the same hunchback look that the Silent Hill 1 nurses had, and thankfully they dropped that within the Silent Hill 2 game because it became much more memorable afterward whenever they skipped that part. And then you'll see some artwork here too, a little bit risque artwork, but it shows that very clearly they were going to follow the whole theme about making this like a man's secret fantasy as much as possible when it comes to sexualizing the idea of nurses and maybe putting them into some kind of like Halloween costume. There may have even been a point you'll see in that picture where it was going to have some kind of like pantyhose, like stockings, the kind of stuff that you see lingerie like when it comes to certain movies. And then as far as other artwork, you're looking at one here where there's at one point going to be a nurse. It was called the Acid Bubblehead Nurse that was going to have some weird tube extending from it. I don't know exactly what it was going to do. With the keyword being acid, maybe, just maybe, it was going to follow the theme of like the lying figure where it would spew some kind of acidic liquid of some sort coming out of its body or coming out of its mouth, who knows. But that was an interesting take that it was going to have. And then you'll notice that like as far as the skirt, it was going to be even shorter than what we saw within the game itself. I mean, that was almost like micro skirt level when it comes to the length of it altogether. But it shows the way that they were going to stretch this thing out, and then that way see what categories they were going to go. And then finally I'll show some other pictures here. With the popularity of this Bubblehead Nurse, it has spawned a whole assortment of figurines to purchase. Anything involving Silent Hill, anything involving figures or toys, you have to have nurses. Those are again a main staple within the film itself. There's this cool looking one you're looking at now, which involves a prominent scene when James is fishing out something from the bottom of, I think it was a drainage pipe of some sort. And then some of the other figures that you'll see here, where again it accentuates their hips and the way they move all together, again focusing on the sexual frustration, the theme that James had within the game itself. Pretty cool stuff. So what do you guys think? Bubblehead Nurse, this is it, the big one when it comes to a monster that would later appear within so many other portions of the Silent Hill franchise, and it all pretty much originated here. The main concept of what it looks like, what it acts like, and what it does, I guess, in any other future mediums. Who knows whether it'll appear later on, but it'll no doubt pay homage again to this Silent Hill 2 item. So, alright everybody, thanks again as always, take care,